Makaykaisen ingapka ngibaha Saub gemitske kaisa sa wana Nesini watri Adami batsi aha itweanga Oire bake wa ngausikwa wastiba
In the 80s, Bonteheuwel responded to ever-increasing police action against them by forming the Bonteheuwel Military Wing, a self-defense unit drawn mainly from school children, many of whom were on the run from police.
That time we used to call it, we're going to have a day of action. Now a day of action is violence.
We were told that there's a youngster at a primary school that is starting to organize.
Ashley was the head figure at our school, Bonteheuwel High, and he was at all times busy, ready to recruit and develop students.
I can literally see him soaking it up.
We were youth, we had no experience about freedom, he came to us and told us how to do things. Ashley was one of the guys who came to us and gave us pamphlets on how to make Molotovs.
Many people criticize Ashley and them. They are mad, they are playing with their own lives. But Ashley was informed by thorough political discussion.
Now, we were targeted. We had to be a step ahead of the police continuously.
He was always special branch police watching, and it was horrible living like that.
I don't think Ashley wanted to be a hero. What you see in front of me is what I am, a servant of my people.
Long, tapered face with a mop of curly black hair. A lean, slender body dressed in khaki shirt and black beret. He was the Che Guevara of the Cape Flats.
Kom ons Bonteheuwel te gaan. Maar die is dan ons plek. Ons hart en ons siel lewe in die plek. Die is waar ons hoort.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ibi, waar is jy, Ibi?
Eendag gaan ek nog uitvind waar hy woon.
Joey, moet jy dom wees, man?
Is nog nie my tyd nie, Nancy.
Ayazibona mina nami yokupheka ke namhlanje kodwa ndizabuya ngexesha eva. I'll cook us something nice. See you soon. Ndakuthanda. Hi mama. Ayazibona mina nami yokupheka ke namhlanje kodwa ndizabuya ngexesha eva.
Mama.
Awuthangela yaphi itafuleni yimi? Inyawo ngiyomntakababa. Usithi uyaphi namhlanje?
Ndiya kwi-boyfriend. Nawe ndzakufunela ke tani. Hayi bo mama. Oh, phofu njengotata.
Ayabuya phofu.
Yeah. No, ndiyabuya.
Uthena waqiniseka?
Ndiyabuya mama. Ndiyabuya.
Action. Unmute.
Oh, there we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the second edition of the Youth Month online virtual series roundtable. And this year we are very excited that at least we are seeing the second edition of this, obviously with new and fresh content from the youth of South Africa that have created various genres of content. And today our conversation and topic really is going to be one of the most exciting because we are discussing the youth breaking boundaries, societal boundaries on youth content and what they have produced. So what I will do now, as I've said that my name is Ntabileng and I will be then the facilitator for today's session. With me, I will then introduce, I'm with Luntu Masiza, Nadine Claude, as well as Gian Vati. So I will just allow them to introduce themselves and give you a little bit of a background of what they have done and who they are, so that by the time we begin this conversation, you understand really who they are and the people that we'll be discussing with the whole day. You are most welcome to send in your questions via our Facebook and our YouTube pages, and we'll ensure that we get those comments into the conversation and we'll try to answer all of your questions as much as we can. And without really wasting time, can I really start with you, Luntu? Can you please just introduce yourself, followed by Nadine and Gianni in that order? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ntabileng. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the viewers and good afternoon to the lovely panel I have here with me today. I'm really excited and honored to be part of the conversation. So thank you to GFC for facilitating and giving a platform for this space. Who is Luntu Masiza? Geez, where do I start? I'm from Pietermaritzburg. That's where I was born, in Pietermaritzburg. So I stayed in Pietermaritzburg from the age when I was born until about 10. And I was in between the Eastern Cape and Pietermaritzburg. I then left Pietermaritzburg in early 2001 and I went to the UK. And that's where I spent most of my formative years. So I was in the UK for 13 years altogether. I went schooling there, primary school there as well, secondary school, college as well. And I was exposed into the arts in 2005 at school, where we had to choose our subjects. What do you want to do? What do you want to specialize in? And one thing about me, I hated reading. I hated writing, anything academic, I hated it. And I was just like, no, that's not for me. And then my teacher said, oh, performing arts. I was like, performing arts? That sounds good. I mean, so I thought I'm just going to be drawing, like I'm going to be drawing people. So, that cuts out all the academic stuff. So I went on to do performing arts, and I went to my first class, and it was acting. I was like, oh, it's not drawing art, it's actually performing. And I saw people holding scripts, and I got really sort of scared and fearful of it. And I was like, this is not for me. But my teacher encouraged me, said, don't do, give it a try, you might enjoy it. And I was like, yeah, sure. I stayed for a week, I stayed for second week, I stayed for the third week, and next minute now I'm actually acting in a play. I was like, what is happening here? But I really fell in love with it. I fell in love with just being loose and just free and just engaging with other people. But most importantly, I fell in love with storytelling. I never saw it as anything deep at the time, and I didn't understand how much it would shape me. You talk about 15 years later, so that's how I got into storytelling. And then I went on to study drama in college, drama school, so that's where I kind of got that as an artist, that drive to want to be a storyteller, to tell stories. And then in 2014, end of 2014, I decided to come back home, and I went to study at AVDA. So I studied at AVDA in Cape Town, 2015. But before actually even going to AVDA, there was a phase, a friend of mine from Nigeria, his name is Oba Corey. Corey, when I moved from Birmingham to London, he had a camera, and then we started doing films and telling our own stories from our own community. So we'd upload it on YouTube. So at the time, YouTube was still kind of new, and then we would get so many viewers and thousands of viewers. We did a project called Domestic Violence, which did really well, and we won a competition through Sony as well. Sony wanted to do something with us. There was all of these platforms, and just sort of what's interesting about the journey is that, you didn't have much around you to play with, but what you did have, you kind of used that. I mean, I remember my first film, which was 45 minutes long, we did it with a digital camera, the small one, the one that you take pictures with, and it was 10 megapixels. And me and my friend, we shot the entire movie just with that, and just the two of us. So she was an editor and I was a director, actor, and then we got all our friends involved and say, hey, you jump on it, come, there's a scene for you, there's a scene, and just creating something. And I think for me, that was a sort of, the bug kind of grows inside of you to say, you know what, this is possible. I love storytelling. So yeah, to cut the long story short, I came back to South Africa in 2015. I went to AVDA. I did a bit of directing as well in first year. And then I went to specialize in acting, and that's where my focus has been. But of course, recently, I was like, you know what, I can't only be an actor. I need to do other things. And one of the things I want to do is producing. So we've gone into producing, and we've just produced a short film, which we shot last year, August, during lockdown, called Some Other Sons. It's a play. It was originally a play, and then because of COVID happening and theaters closing down, I was like, hey, guys, how do we do this into a film? How do we continue to work? How do we continue to enhance our craft? How do we continue to keep the drive going and not sit here and complain and say, COVID is happened, theaters are closed, and therefore we can't do anything. I was like, no, we're not going to do that. And so I called some of my friends I went with to AVDA, and we all came back together and we created this film, which has been accepted to some international festivals in Italy and the Cannes Indie Short Cannes Festival. So it's really exciting. There's still many more festivals as well we've applied for. We're just waiting to hear back. And on a nutshell, that's kind of Luntu. That's who I am. I'm a lover of life. I'm a lover of people. I'm a lover of storytelling, and that's me. Ntabeleng is laughing at me. Nadine, I hand over to you.
Thanks, Linku. That was an awesome introduction. Yeah, who am I? My name is Nadine, born and bred in Cape Town. Yeah, I think, you know, being born here and living here has really influenced the work that I do, the politics of the space. I feel like have really shaped me. So I got into filmmaking because of a love and an interest in writing. And when I was really little, I thought I would be a detective. I was very interested in that. And then, and then it changed into writing. And then, I just felt like, well, now that the piece is written, what happens to it, And so in Matric, I was 17 and I'd written a short story, and I then got friends together to create this thing, same as you, Luntu, ancient cameras, editing across two VHS decks, just making it happen, getting everyone involved. And in that film won, it was called Roses, and it won a gold award it was written in Afrikaans, and so it won a gold award at the ATKV, the Afrikaans Taal en Kunstvereniging, right? And that was a huge surprise, and the prize money was 500 Rand, and we just threw a party with the money. But it was also a great start, it was a great start to saying, well, you could do this, because what was interesting at the ATKV when we went, it was like, they were doing all sorts of things, all sorts of cultural plays, and so that young people expressing themselves through different mediums. And it was great to have your film part of such a platform at that age. And then the following year, I then did a show. I heard of this film competition called Youth for Human Rights. And the aim of the competition was to do something about human rights, but to present solutions around the topic. So here in South Africa, as you know, we have a lot of gang violence, but especially gang violence that comes onto schools, right? So I felt I wanted to have this conversation about not only do we have the right to education, but we have the right to a safe education. And what are the solutions to creating a safe education for ourselves? And so that was a piece that I wrote, and the film ends, it's a short film, and it ends with the learners standing up, for themselves and having a protest against the violence that was going on in the community. And that short film was actually filmed with learners of Cathkin High must have been 2004, 2005, because my father was a school teacher in Heidelberg. So at Cathkin High, we just got those learners. It was amazing. The school just gave their support. And then that film won at that festival. I still have the trophy. It was Youth for Human Rights International Film Festival. And that was the first international film festival that I attended, because it was held in Los Angeles. And and that's how things progressed. I then went on to study at UCT. And at UCT, it's where I switched my focus to documentary, and that really changed my life. I feel like documentary helped me. When you do documentary, there's such a mutual exchange of energies between you and the people that you are interviewing. And I always say that documentary helps me get to know my own country a lot better. There are doors that open when you walk in there with a camera, and it's just like I've learned things about my country I never would have if I hadn't been a documentary filmmaker. So yeah, and then did documentaries. My first feature documentary was called Action Commandant. It's about the life of liberation hero Ashley Kriel, and that did very well. And we can unpack that a bit later. And then in the last 2 years, I won't say moved back into fiction. I've just spread into fiction again with Address Unknown and the series that I directed on called Melody, and working on a couple of things now as well. So yeah, that's my journey, part of my journey.
Cool. Gianni?
Let me unmute myself first, that will help. Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm gonna try and be as thorough as I can, but I'm very scatterbrained, so forgive me. My journey started when I was in primary school. I had a deep, deep love for all things animation. I especially latched onto Dragon Ball Z. And one day I had a teacher come up to me watching me draw and said, "Oh, you're going to be an animator." And I had no idea what that was. So I said, "No, I'm not going to be an animator," because at that time my aspiration was actually to become a medicine woman and a hunter-gatherer. Little did I know that's not actually a viable career at all. So I was very disappointed to find that out, but I carried on with the art and the drawing. And at some point around grade 7, someone approached me and said, "Can you draw a few things for my family and I'll pay you?" And I'm like, wow, people will pay you to draw. So I started looking into that a bit more. And then as life went on, eventually people started introducing me to the fact that animators get paid as well, which was amazing to me. So I then eagerly latched onto animation, and I learned about it. My very, very first film, if you could call it that, was actually, I don't know if you remember the old flip phones, but yes. I would draw a picture, take a picture, draw a picture, take a picture, and then scroll through the gallery really, really, really fast until it appeared like it moved. And that was how I did my first ever animation. I think it was someone kicking a wall. And that just absolutely gripped me. The fact that this thing that is flat and lying on my desk, it can move, it can breathe, you can make all this sort of come out. So after that, I pursued my education in animation. I actually ended up studying at AFTA. And while I was at AFTA, I got more exposition to film. I had no idea how much I would love sound design. I actually almost took that as a career, but I stuck with my original love. So I majored in screenwriting and animation, but at the same time, I would take a lot of pleasure into sneaking into my friends' classrooms. So I love sneaking in on cinematography, on costume design, on set productions. She was a set designer. I really, really liked visual effects as well. So I tried to get as exposed to everything about film as possible. And from that, I actually ended up chatting to the head of school at the time, or the head of writing, who put me in contact with a studio in Canada who needed storyboards. And from there, I sort of journeyed into the world of storyboards, working in pre-production, behind the scenes. I was never someone that you would see in a film. I was never someone that actually worked on the film itself, the moving images. I sort of really found my niche, making the backbone, the blueprints, and the storyboards. And then from there, things just sort of escalated. I found it really interesting that never once did I actually go out looking for people. There were people somehow always contacting me. Large thanks to my mother, who just was so proud. She wouldn't stop advertising me everywhere. But very soon I was working with, Bug Box Studios, a few other South African studios, Wild Dog Productions. And that eventually led me to work with a studio called Sir Lancelot, which actually put me on for the advertising team for the Lego movies. And through that connection, I actually met my current workplace, Timologong, and through them, I was very fortunate to do a residency in France, where I studied at Gobelin, focusing on how do you teach and what gaps do we have in our education system here in South Africa. I learned a lot about layout, which is something we barely hear about here. We assume, environment design is just intuitive, but there was a lot more to it and a lot of holes that I realized needed to be filled. So I came back, and what I do now is I train animators and I train artists coming out of university, and artists who are self-taught, and we upskill them so that they can become professionals in the industry. And we have a really deep focus on African imagery. So as always, we try to bring it back on what they're passionate about. And last year we had the pleasure of actually making a film. So you would see, if you were listening, one of my interests has always been in ancient cultures, which is, I was obsessed with becoming a medicine woman. I really adored these ancient cultures and how they lived and everything. So I really adore that I can bring my other passions into this as well. And through that, we actually ended up making From the Cave's Mouth.
Thank you. So now, I think it's that time when I'm going to ask all of our panelists to unmute, because I want now to have conversations. So this is that point where I just want us to go in, and we're going to just give like a conversation around. And the reason why I want all of us to unmute, because I want everybody to just throw in their understanding of what does it mean to you that the youth breaking boundaries to grow audiovisual industries. So what does that mean to you, and how are you breaking those boundaries, and how are you getting the support to ensure that you are breaking those boundaries? Let's go into it. I'm going to start with Nadine. Shout quickly. We are on it. We've got a lot of questions from our audiences, unfortunately. So there is a lot of fire that I'm seeing. So we need to rush through this because we have little bit of time. But before you respond, Nadine, I will request our technical manager to allow Twiggy in. And just on our audiences, I just really want to apologize. Twiggy was actually on set. She's actually on set. And, as we know, audiovisual industries, there's emergencies all the time. So she is on set. She's going to join us from set. So she will be joining us very soon. Our technical manager will just include her in as we're going into these responses. Nadine?
Yeah, I think how I try to break boundaries is by tackling subject matters that people say, don't do it. If I look at the Action Commandant film, the story about Ashley Kriel, that was made at a time when people were saying, oh, we don't want to hear another apartheid story. But the difference was like how you did it and who you did it about and who you're doing it for, I think, and being very clear about, that audience. And you asked about support. I was privileged because when Action Commandant was released, one of the first places outside of the festival scope where we had the screening was in Bonteheuwel, the community we actually came from. And to get the love and support from that community is something that you'll never forget and something that you don't take for granted, simply because people don't see themselves represented in that way very often. And I must say, the Encounters Documentary Film Festival is happening right now. But when Action Commandant was released on the festival in 2016, it had a record number of 7 sold-out screenings, right? Which had never happened at the festival at that time before, just proving that if people are telling you don't do it, people are saying, oh, we're tired of the subject matter. There is a unique way that you go. That you approach it, and there's a unique audience that you are aiming for. So I think as youth, it's our duty to challenge those notions, but to also do things in very different and new ways.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Nadine. And I think sometimes it's about being brave. How do you be, I think we've got to have courage, man. We've got to be brave to want to tell the stories that we want to tell as young people. And I know a lot of the times the challenge can be, oh, how can I do it? Oh, do I have the finances? But I talk about some mother's sons because it was a real push through COVID-19 with, where the country was on lockdown, hard lockdown. And we're like, okay, what do we do? Do we sit down and not tell the story because we believe the story matters? We believe that the society and the world needs to engage in stories about law, about law versus justice. What is justice? Especially in South Africa, where you see so much happening and there's so little justice. And how then do we go on and be brave and say, you know what? We don't have the resources now, but what do we have? Okay, we know someone who's got a camera. Okay, let's bring them on. Okay, we don't have this. Okay, how do we get this person involved? And being able just to take the courage and not talk yourself out of it. Because a lot of the times also we do talk ourselves out of an idea because people are saying, oh no, well, we don't have this. And then you end up pondering on that and sitting on it and saying, yeah, actually, I don't have this. Actually, it won't work because of this. And then that's it. The idea is gone. Rather than just being brave and being courageous and say, you know what? I don't have ABC. What do I have? let me use that and work with that. And I think that's what we need, and being brave as South African storytellers as well. And yeah, that's my 2 cents in there.
Thank you.
If I could add to that, I think also what we don't realize one of our biggest contributions could be is just simply meeting as a community. There's so much more strength in numbers, and having met other artists with similar ideas and aspirations, you can really actually find the resources you need. You find half the time money isn't even an issue if you know people around you. And you know what their interests are, you can actually barter on skills. So, okay, I will animate this amount of time for you if you help me on my film in a few months. And, there's so many other ways to produce and get stuff off the ground. I think one of our most underutilized and biggest advantages is how connected and on the ball the youth is. The older generations, if I dare say, they've already been set in their ways and they know how to get stuff done. But because we have that inexperience, we've actually got a lot of space to innovate still. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. So my feeling is get them in as young as possible and get them connected to a community.
I agree. And I think what I will do now, I'll just go into our comments. So as and when I'm off the screen, I would like just to our viewers to know that I am not running away from you. I'm just reading your comments and I want to ensure that we are including everybody. Chanel Catherine Fredericks is saying, Action Commandant, big ups. Anton Fisher is saying, Address Unknown is winning the SAFTA for the best short film. Congratulations, Nadine. Kendall from Tsimologong, Mahati say, congratulations, Janie from the Cave's Mouth for getting screened at the Venice Film Festival in UK and getting official selection at the LA Rock Film Festivals. Big up to that. Lebogang Tolo is saying it's amazing to have one day, and actually I would like to come and work and meet with the GFC. You are most welcome to come see us, Lebogang. We are happy to also meet with people that want to be in the industry and create good work. Natalie is saying creatives are innovative and they love it. Melanie Detroit Duplessis, Vincent, much inspiration for young ladies. Your mom is still so proud. So whose mom is that? Natalie. Oh, yes, mom is still proud. Mom is watching. Mom is a big follower. And yes, Natalie is saying, well done, Nadine, and thank you for telling authentic stories. So Natalie is congratulating you. So I think in terms of the content that you are creating, the question that I want to ask you is, how do you want your world to see your work versus how your work has been received in the country? Because I know from the three of you, there is so much reputation, there is so much work that you have done, and it's been very appreciated outside of the borders of South Africa. I know Action Commandant did very well, and it did like a good series of festival runs, and it did and won so many awards. It was actually really a talk of every film festival at some point. And it did very well. How are you seeing South Africans appreciating your content versus how it's actually being received internationally? Let's start with you, Gianni.
So I just noted that down because otherwise I'll forget the question. So for me, I think one of the biggest things, obviously, is South Africans and the cultures in South Africa are underrepresented. We are striving at work where I work at Tsimologong to try and break away from the stereotype of what Africa is. You know, Africa is not just loincloths, it's not just lions, it's not just a felt. You've got so many subcultures and cultures happening here. So I feel like our film, although it does deal with that, but that's just because that's my personal interest, it was refreshing to see representation, especially to have, so the dialect that we had in the film is Kuku-Khawab, which is one of the oldest living languages in the world. And it is only spoken by about 10 people that are still alive. So I want to also bring attention to these kind of issues within our country to hopefully get them support that they need. On an international basis, I feel like it was well received, not just because this is a pretty African aesthetic, but because the story, the intention is to humanize. We are not a commodity for tourists to gawk at, but remember the people and the actual real issues going on behind these stories. So I felt like our film did a good job in, you know, humanizing and representing these families. What else was I going to say? It flew out my head, so I'm just going to let someone else take over for now. I'm not going to hold up the process.
Anyone wants to come in on that?
Yeah.
No, let's not do that. I mean, we are having a conversation, so please feel free to jump in, please.
Yes, leave us. Let us be. I was gonna say it's interesting that because I think for me also coming from outside, coming back to South Africa, and whenever I was in the UK, and you'd hear about South African work, whether even talking about as actors, gospel, Soweto gospel choir, and how much people overseas would admire and appreciate South African art, and it's almost as if they cherish it. And I think for me at home, because there's so much talent, it's easy to kind of skip over and say, yeah, we've already seen that, or we've heard that. And perhaps that's where the appreciation overseas is a lot more, and you can see it because people talk about it and they'll tweet about it, they'll expose it out there so much. And it's a global world, it's an international festival, whatever it may be. And I say that even, for example, some other sons, we never got accepted yet to film festivals in South Africa, but we were able to be accepted overseas so quick. Like we're like, wow. And I think it's that because we're a unique country, and South Africa is so unique. As much as we have so much issues that we can talk about crime, but we're such a beautiful nation, and people engaging in our stories. And I think it is our duty as artists to tell South African stories and continue to tell them out there in the world. And people can see there's more than just crime. There's more than just apartheid in South Africa. There's so much more we need to tell and talk about into the world. But also home, how do we then get home as well to appreciate it even more and engage with it, with our work? And then I think that's a question, and we're still trying to discover it. Maybe, is it the same people who are telling the stories or given the opportunity? That could be a reason. I don't know. If someone else wants to jump in, Nadine, I don't know if you might have something to say on that. Putting you under the bus.
I mean, just on the other question really quickly about how the work gets accepted overseas versus I think in different countries people pick up on different themes, but I think being Black, being a person of color in the world, that there is a universality across the work, and like with Action Commandant, it was received amazingly well, especially in the States, because people were grappling on the theme of police brutality and could see that in our experience right here in South Africa. And then coming home and screening it here, what really surprised me was how school children would get very emotional around the image of Ashley Kriel. But I think more so because Ashley is a young person and here's a figure that they can now identify with, right? And with some highly emotional screenings with Action Commandant, especially for young people. So that was really interesting and again a privilege for me to be a part of. And the same with Address Unknown. Address Unknown takes place in District 6. And it's again a story that hits the heart of many. And I think for the film to have won the SAFTA for the short film, it not only speaks to the production itself, but speaks to just like what our people are looking for, right? And what the work is able to do.
And would you then in that spirit and breath, Nadine, say that you've been well accepted, or do you think the industry has been kind to you? Or as the youth, the work that you have been doing, you have earned the respect that you deserve, given the caliber and the quality of work you've produced? Do you think the industry has been kind to you? Askies.
I'd say they are still... No, I think there's so many boundaries to break. There are still so many, especially, I think what's been kind to me is the audiences, the people you do the work for. I mean, to be seen by as the president said, my fellow South Africans. But to be really seen by my fellow South Africans, that means the world. But there's so much work to be done within the industry in itself. I mean, I'm a woman, I'm a person of color. What do all these things mean? And yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, my colleagues who are men, white, etc., they are on their third, fourth, 10th feature film my age, and I'm not. They are not for lack of trying, but it takes me longer to develop work. I don't have the capital at the beginning, for example. So in terms of industry, yes, I feel there's a certain level of recognition by peers, but it takes longer to produce. It still takes longer to get out there. I think these things are changing, but not changing fast enough. And I'll leave it at that.
Would you be having the same challenge, Gianni, or is your experience different?
I've found my experience is different, but I think it's also the circles we're around in. Where I've landed up is generally more casual. As I say, for many, many years, I was a freelancer, so I sort of played by my own rules. And now that I've started working in teams, I found that, it can get tricky to navigate and collaborate, because obviously wherever you are, there will be some sort of politics at play. But I find that my experience so far has been more forgiving, but I think that's because part of where I work, their mission is to bring in people of color, to bring in women, to bring in people that haven't necessarily had that opportunity. So I've sort of been surrounded by those sort of peers. So as for myself, it's not as noticeable. And I think it's also because of the kind of industry I'm in, animation versus documentaries. It's a lot more intensely, intimately collaborative because of how long and how in depth you have to be each other with the kind of work that we do. Yeah.
I think just to come in before you do, Luntu, is that even from the Film Commission side, I do want to tell that in my experience, even the number of applications that we receive from females or from women of color are very, very minimal. So we are still struggling with the issues of transformation, even from a production level, from content or script development or any festival invitation runs, any form of applications that we have at the Film Commission at the moment. Women are the least that are applying. Women of color are also the least that are applying. So we still have that issue of the majority of productions that are applying are still male driven, even just from a government funding perspective. But also, I think even on a professional, individual perspective, in my experience, is that even if when sometimes I could still say something, there will still be some form of a doubt, and someone will then call my superior, who is female and Black, and they say, "Are you confirming what you're saying?" And you'll be like, "But I'm saying it because of it is the right thing." But I think there's always that being doubted in what you are saying, and somebody wants to then reaffirm what you are saying from a male perspective to say, is she right? And then only when the male then agrees, and then somebody then gives you a better ear in the future, which is always something that we always battle with. And I think it's still going to take time to change for somebody to just accept you for knowing what you know, not wanting to double check on what you are saying is correct, or is it in line with standards, or is it in line with what should be done. And I think it still takes time in terms of acceptance of just somebody listening to you at the first time and moving on and engaging on what you are saying. So it's really something that even from the end on where I'm sitting, it's something that we are also battling and experiencing. But I would like to see, when we're talking about the youth, I would like to see if not a balance, but an improvement in terms of gender balance, particularly in terms of race balance. Because I think another thing that we have seen, yes, government agencies are there to enable us and to also create balances within racial imbalances, gender imbalances, age balances. we're still running very far. Like we're still like the top ones are still on top, the lower ones are still low. And I think then it begins to build this conversation that we've always having to say, in actual fact, as a youth, do you become an emerging filmmaker in South Africa until when? Because I think this emerging conversation, it's not even about the work that you have done. It seems it's also categorized as per your age, but no one can then recognize your experience, Nadine, with receiving so many awards globally, to say, in actual fact, maybe you're not emerging because you've done one work that has received so much accolades, unlike someone that has done 10, and those films have not seen light of day. So which one is which? Like, which one is a greater filmmaker when we really wanting to talk rands and cents? Is somebody that has made 10 films that are stuck at home gathering dust and only been seen when there's a family gathering, a filmmaker versus the one person that only did one and actually made over 1 million? When are we beginning to have conversations of film business as a film without doubting gender, without doubting race, without doubting age and experience that you have also existed within the industry? At which point are we beginning to start breaking that as the boundaries to say, you don't have to listen to me because I am 65. Therefore, it makes what I'm saying more valid than the person that is 16, for example. Luntu, what's your view on that?
No. Yeah, no. No,
Excuse, I'm that girl today.
You really put me under the bus there. And I was just taking it in and trying to think in terms of, because there's also a thing of you lack experience and then at what point and how do you create experience because it can go even being hired in production, because I've got friends who are females and they want to go into production houses, and when they do apply and they want to say, look, I want to work in this production company, I want to be part of it, they're like, no, you don't have enough experience. And then at what point then would they ever get an opportunity? So you go and train for many years in drama schools or film school, but yet you're not given the opportunity to enter into the space. So for me, I think this is when that entrepreneurship mindset and not relying on I think I've never really relied on government or institution. I've always said, okay, if one is not getting the funding, how do I just create the opportunities for myself? And how do I look around my network? It's what I was saying earlier on. How do you take that boldness and courage and say, you know what, I'm not gonna wait for anyone and even to determine me that I'm a filmmaker. How about I just go ahead and start in doing the thing? And then I'm already a filmmaker rather than waiting for someone to perhaps approve of that. I don't know if does that make sense, to approve me as a filmmaker?
I think that's what I'm saying. It's always tricky, particularly if you are the youth, because at which point do you stop being emerging? At which point can someone say you've got enough experience if we are not making enough films? I mean, one of the things that is evident on the box office reports is that South Africa is actually really producing 10% of the 90% that is distributed theatrically. So everything that is released in theaters and cinemas, 90% of the work is international work, meaning 10% of the work that is there for the whole year is work that is created in South Africa, meaning in a year, there's impossible for South Africans to actually produce more than 20 films that will go to cinema. So it then gets tricky too, then where will you get this experience if we are not also producing enough? Because for you to get the experience, it means there must be working on-job training, on-job experience that one has to create. But if issues of funding and issues of sourcing of funds to create any kind of content which we are creating is difficult to just acquire the funds, then it means there will always be a lack of experience, because of then there's not enough work where for you to get the experience. So it's always like a catch-22.
Yeah.
But I think whilst I'm on that, Gianni, there is a question for you from Bonolo Khumulimo. She's saying, Gianni, you are moving into the fourth industrial revolution. Please take us through the future of animation, since it is said that animation is taking over.
Well, okay, I will answer that directly after. I just wanted to attach my last thought there to the last thing. Is I've got this question of who is the authority that says that you're an up and coming, director, and that surely it's the audience. And when there's an audience, watching and consuming, that is where your connection needs to be and where your focus should be. I understand there's a lot more frustrations, you know, in different areas of the industry in terms of just breaking in. There is this horrible disconnect between how much experience validates you to get access to more, which is very annoying. So I think the conversation needs to shift more to how can we break away this habit of keeping everything close to your chest and playing the cards that, you know, you've got to the side here, and actually bringing in people in, because just because you haven't got a certificate, because you haven't got so many set years on a piece of paper, doesn't mean that you can't add value. So I feel like the conversation needs to shift away from the what do you call it, the tangible papers and stuff you can hold on to show me what you can do. Actually show me your thoughts, your interests. I don't know if I'm making sense here.
No, it makes sense.
Just to go on to Bonolo's question here, I'm not an authority on animation. I'm part of the industry, and I will always be learning along with everyone. But what I can say is I suspect that the fourth industrial revolution will take a little while to sort of commence in South Africa, because in case no one's noticed, we sort of sometimes don't have electricity, we sometimes don't have water. There's a few, infrastructural issues we need to sort out before we can actually, really look into getting into this. So it's one of the biggest challenges I think we're going to be facing. But in terms of animation has always been a very malleable, adjustable, changeable thing. Every new film that Pixar or Disney brings out, there's a new process of doing things. So it's very difficult to say where the fourth industrial revolution is going to take us, because animation is constantly changing the way we operate and how we create technology around it. So I really can't answer that. We'll just have to see.
But in that same breath, and this was going to be my next question, to say, in your little space, right? What change would you like to see happen in your corner? Because for me, my belief, and I may be wrong and I stand to be corrected, change can only be done on things that you can put change on. You can't want change where you don't have power or where you don't have control of the change. So what kind of change in your space you think you would need that it will enable you to then effect the change for it to grow to what it could be? And it could then maybe either be a ripple effect in some of the other projects on your co-workers.
Yeah. I think it comes to like, what is your circle of influence? What are you able to affect? And for me, I think what I live by and what I hope that I sort of imprint on others is there is a time to be doing stuff and there's a time to shut up and listen. Especially if there are young people talking. We had some amazing artists come through the lab who were 12 and 14, just on a tour one day. And they just fell in love with animation. And then they used to come skip school and tell us, oh, we got out of school early, can we come learn? And they turned out to be insanely talented, really insightful young people. So obviously we did let the parents know that they were here skipping school, and we made a plan so that they could come through on their weekends. But just by listening to what they had to say and allowing them the space to ask questions, there was a lot more interaction going, and we both grew because I learned, oh, I didn't realize this would be an issue for someone. Let me figure out ways I can improve here. And then they had the opportunity in the space that's unbiased and, it's not stiff. They could actually ask the questions that were burning for them to ask. So I think for me, the first thing we can do to sort of break down barriers, especially for the youth, is to sort of sit back, listen to what's being said, allow people to bring their ideas to the table and work from there.
That's a good one.
I don't know what you guys think. I don't know if there is a program like this in South Africa, particularly because I remember there's a time in the UK, there was a program I took part in. So it was a 6 weeks program. So for the first 6 weeks, what you do training. So as a cameraman, you've been trained to be a cameraman. And they were very specific. They want to take people from disadvantaged background, people who don't have the access to go to film school, etc. So you do that program for 6 weeks, just training, and you have a producer. They've been trained to be a producer. You have all different, departments. You have a researcher, who are going to actually do the create the show. And then after they get taught, how do they approach people? How do they approach celebrities to create this TV show that we're going to make? After 6 weeks, we actually start shooting. We shoot, we do interviews with celebrities. We shoot events, etc. And then at the end of the course, that gets played on the TV. But not only that, all the young people get put in placement. So, for example, you're gonna go to the BBC. You're gonna do your work experience there at the BBC for the next 2 months, 3 months, and then and that's a way of kind of getting your foot in there. And a lot of my friends who I did the program with at the time, some of them are now actually writing for BBC, BBC dramas, and they involve in different parts, but they never had the experience before except to be in the industry, and they were given that opportunity, a program which was short, intense. I mean, and it was actually teaching you skills. I mean, you wake up at 5 in the morning and you're going to work, and how do you calculate money, etc. How do you put things aside? And I think a program like that would be great. I'm not sure if there is, maybe there is, and I don't know about it.
There isn't much sorry, Nadine, please go ahead.
I also just want to come in there about how do we move from being emerging? And I think one of the things is to realize, guys, you can't only be working on one project. And I know one project is stressful enough as it is, but you have to be working on things constantly. So if one project is already going into production or distribution phase, you have that next thing coming. When the NFVF, for example, puts a call out, you have something that's ready. You have something that's ready to go. I also want to say we need to learn more about marketing. We need to learn more about distribution. There are new ways to do these things. I mean, lockdown has also opened all these avenues. So you don't need to do a film that sits on your shelf. There are ways to get it out there. And also when you do get it out there, be well aware of your intellectual property, be well aware of what a licensing deal entails, be aware of copyright and so on, right? So that you keep on moving. So you are in development with something, you have something in distribution. If something's distributing, you have, you know what I mean? You have to keep it moving. You have to keep it moving.
I think coming back to what you were saying, Luntu, in South Africa, we do not have a formalized structure. However, I think we depend on internship programs and learnership programs that will then allow for people to then step into the industry and then in turn in various companies for them to get the necessary experience. Because once again, it's always still a catch-22. Someone will say you don't have the experience, but then you are not given the experience to have the experience. So I think in South Africa, we are using spaces of learnership programs and internship programs to at least begin to put foot into the industry and become a new entrant and begin to start creating content. One of the things that I've seen become a challenge in my experience, and maybe from the experience of my work, is that we no longer have the people that have the patience to create short films. People think that short films are not the it anymore. I'm not too sure why. And I think as a result of people wanting to leave AFDA or any institution of higher learning, people want to just go into the industry and create a feature film, and they think they are the next big director that the world has been waiting for. And unfortunately, the world is very cold out there and the industry is very harsh out there. And then when things don't happen the way you anticipate or the way you had wished, and then as a result, a lot of hope, it has killed a lot of filmmakers that have gone to school, have wasted so much money in their tuition fees, but they did not get the anticipated results from an institute of higher learning. So I think there's just this energy that short films are not the it. If you want to be the it, you must start with the feature film. And it kills a lot of people. It kills a lot of spirits, because even in your short film, there's a lot of mistakes. After your first short film, you're like, is it really me? Like 3 years later. And you really also don't want to watch the thing because it's so scary. But I think I think people are also avoiding the learning space of doing short films, because once you are amazing at short films, all these mistakes are less costly, because a feature film is so costly that you cannot afford to make financial mistakes, particularly looking at the financial constraints of making a film in South Africa. So people are really avoiding to make short films. They think it's not the in thing, but actually the short films are the space where you are able to still be able to have that mistake that you will really not hang yourself when things don't go well, because you will still have another opportunity. Hence, even in at some point, like a few years ago, there was a huge criticism when Mzansi Magic started, and it gave people little money to create low budget films. There was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of negativity that the industry particularly pushed. But when you then also think about it, without being judgmental, where would the people that made those short films would have made their mistakes? Because there was an environment for people to create those short films, to make those mistakes, to learn from those mistakes. So by the time they produced the second film and the third film, they've actually learned more. Yes. And in as much as it was bad for the industry, people felt that the industry is pulling people down. But who would have given all these filmmakers this opportunity? Because for you to know how to do right, you need to have the platform to make those mistakes, right? Then when you grow, then you are able to then look at your first, your third, and your seventh film. You can see how you've grown. And you'll also see the bank account as you grow. Because we need to get to a point when creativity and conversations around creativity is done, we need to start speaking about the business of audiovisual industries. That's really what it boils down to. And animation has got that business plan so well that animators, they talk about money. They don't shy away from the conversations of money, yet fiction films, when we are talking about money, we even don't look at people in the eyes because we think we are not worthy to talk about the money. And I think that's the conversation that we need to break, of starting to talk about the money and how we are going to start making profits, because eventually we need to get and move away from entities like the Gauteng Film Commission and the NFVF being enablers, because we are just enabling you for you to then grow and be independent and then create jobs for the industry and for other people. And that's how we'll then bring in what you were saying, Luntu, which is now the entrepreneurship within the creative industries, to then be able to speak about creativity, but also the business of film. Nadine, what's your view on that?
Yeah, like I said, we must understand the business of films. We're not making films just for the sake of, this is our livelihood at the end of the day. I mean, what you were saying about short films, we say we crawl before you walk kind of thing. And so you must master, the art of the shorts. I mean, these are not rules set in stone, but I would encourage people to do shorts before doing your feature, not only to learn the story worlds, but also how to learn how to work with the different departments on set. You know what I mean? Like, and how to communicate with all these different people that are working with you. And that comes through practice and through these shorts. And very often people do shorts also to act as kind of promos for longer films. But also I think there are power in shorts themselves. I did a short that's 4 minutes called Miseducation. It's on YouTube. But Miseducation, I feel is like, for myself, it's on my top 3 list that I've done myself, simply because of the powerful message that it has, and also that Miseducation had its world premiere on the New York Times UpDoc site, right? Which was just but it was being in development at the time that Miseducation was released. But there's a lot you can do with short films. Short films can be distributed a lot faster. Many film festivals have special sections just for short films. They don't sell yourself shorts. And even the Oscars have a short film section. And there are many international film festivals that are Oscar what's it like, accredited. So if you screen your short film at a festival, it might be a lot easier for you to get your short film in there and be seen by the right people. You know, whereas a feature, it takes longer, it takes a lot more money, there's a lot more people involved, a lot more moving parts. I really suggest, you know, starting with shorts first. And yeah, I mean, our resources are always an issue, especially here in Cape Town. We don't have a film commission that funds us. No, you get, at least you have your KZN Film Commission, you have your Gauteng Film Commission. In Cape Town, we don't have a commission per se that we can submit work to and get the funding. So we're also competing with everyone at, you know, National Film and Video Foundation, DTI, and so on. So we need more bodies that, or institutions, foundations, commissions that just fund generally. But what I must big up even the NEVF is that it really places a focus on development. So before you go into production, there are all these development phases that you go through, and it places a sincere focus on that work, which I think is key. And I know a lot of people want to rush through that, but it's so important to really sit with your research report and work through your outline before you move on, because what's the point? Like you said, you end up making a film that goes where if it's not focused.
And Gianni, in animation, I know that, you know, in animation, and particularly even from Discop, I know it's also very challenging for, even in markets, for one to actually strike a deal. And I think I've seen that in animation, it seems to be getting deals in any market seems to be much more effective for animation than it is for fiction films. What's your view on that? Or maybe rather, what's the secret? Because maybe that's what we need to we need to steal from animation.
I think it's the way animation. So animation is really, 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 really expensive, because unlike film, if you make a mistake, you can just do a quick retake. So animators have to be very, very meticulous planners. So they know their stuff a lot more thoroughly, I think, ahead of time, and generally are more prepared with their pitches. But they also have a lot more tools in their toolbox that they can use to really up these pitches, such as the storyboard, such as a few teaser visual development items, which, you know, for film, developing the look of your film, when you're in the very early phases of film and you're pitching the idea, it's going to evolve a lot more over time, to the point that you wouldn't exactly know what the end result is going to look like. Animation, again, is so well planned, or has to be so well planned, that you can give a very clear idea of what your end goal is from the get-go. And I think it's partially that, you know, that absolute need to sell your product and be clear on what your intentions are, as opposed to film, which, you know, is still opening up for collaboration, but further, you know, further down the line. I wanted to add to one of your previous points, but I couldn't find like a space to get into the conversation there. A part of, you know, getting into the
industry. Cut me when you want to cut me.
Okay, I feel rude though. I feel really rude.
I speak a lot of things. I'll confuse you. I'm good like that.
But I think one thing I did want to add is I feel like one of the biggest things we need to do as artists, I feel like we have the personal responsibility to make a point to teach a fellow artist trying to get into the industry. It's something that I will always live by, that each one must teach one. And don't think of it as inviting competition. Think of it as building your crew. The only way that you can succeed in an industry is to physically build the industry. And I love that there's so much appreciation here for short film as well. Short film is awesome.
But I think what we are struggling with, particularly whilst we are on you, Gianno, on animation, there is that struggle of where do we see South African animation? Because, you know, a lot of animators in South Africa, they're doing work for foreign companies, and that is a fact. And there's so much work, that they're also contributing to the GDP. But actually, all the work that has been done in South Africa is actually celebrated or it's produced internationally. And we are not seeing our work here, besides the work that has been done successfully by Triggerfish. Thank you to them. But we actually just generally will not have your, I'm a fan of adult animation, but we don't know where to see South African adult animation. We don't have enough kids animation in South Africa. We don't have enough, we don't even have enough animation of indigenous languages. Right? That's another thing. So, and when we then begin to talk about the conversation about audience development, and I always make this example to say personally, audience development for me when I was young, I was developed as an audience that understood Chinese films when I did not know Chinese, but all of us will go in the township in some hall where it was closed with plastics, and we'll just sit there, and then it was running on film. On print actually, and would watch that. So as a result, even if you can put any Chinese film now, I can relate because I was developed as a action, a karate audience developed consumer from a very early age, and that's really what audience development is. And as a result of trying to preserve languages and South African languages, we don't have content that will assist our kids to preserve language. We don't have I don't want to put out of context. We don't have like a colored, if I can put it there, or a colored animation where they can say massacred. We don't have a massacred animation. Please correct me. I don't want to be politically wrong. But we don't have that.
I agree. The biggest issue
and it's a problem.
Don't have
it's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem because the child in Cape Flats. What are they referring to when they are talking about animation? What is talking to them? A child in Kofi Mbaba, what Xhosa animation is there that is talking to them? But also vice versa, even in fiction, because we don't have enough kids' content.
Yeah, there's a number of issues. Oh, sorry, Nadine.
Just to come in quickly, there are. I feel again, it's a thing of. There are people creating the work. I have my friend Deirdre Janchis, for example, who got into animation. She's doing her thing under NAAP. She just got into it. She didn't study animation, but she has a knack for stories. She's doing some amazing things now, even co-producing with somebody on another continent, right? So it's just a matter of how do we get the work out there and how do we get people to see these things? Because I'm sure there are many people who are developing the work. Just how do we get, how do we keep getting it out there is the thing. So,
so there's a number of things.
The NFVF does fund animation, by the way.
Yes, no, the NFVF has been absolutely amazing. I don't think the industry would have a leg to stand on without the NFVF. But I think one is not enough people understand what goes into animation. My own brother broke my heart the other night. He was waiting for an indie series that comes out with an episode almost every month. They're a tiny crew, and he's like, "Where's this episode? Why is it taking so long?" And I was like, "Do you know how hard it is to get this stuff out on time? You know, especially for 2D animation, every single picture, 24 pictures for a second of film has to be drawn, it has to be colored, it has to be composited, it has to be lit. There's so much work that people just are not aware of. And what they see is how much money they're going to have to spend and how much longer animation typically takes. So there's less urge to invest there. Another issue is that a lot of, as you've said, a lot of our work gets outsourced because that's where the money lies at the moment. We haven't got enough support from home at this point to really say, okay, I'm going to take the time now to take this money and make a short film. It's not going to sell cars. It's not going to sell cool drink. It's not going to get someone to call this hotline. It's going to be about a child on a soccer field. It's really hard to get people to take that leap. So we need to really create this culture of what is the end result and start letting people understand that it's okay to make film for the sake of enjoying it. It doesn't always have to be this product. I'm really bothered by the fact that we are so business minded. I know we've got a huge job insecurity in South Africa. But in order to make space for this to happen, we do have to, from time to time, put aside the business mind and start really investing in what we want to build. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. No one else is going to do it for us.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we're talking about passion projects and having to do, we want to do passion projects, and they were like, "But Luntu, even if you are doing passion projects, you must still get paid. You still need to get paid for those passion projects, And then my thing is how do we create a platform where I'm doing a passion project? I think the thing is, as artists, as creatives, you come as a creative. I'm an artist, I'm a creative, and that's what I know how to do. But after that, beyond that, you almost lose sight of it on how do you pay yourself? Because even if you apply for funding, sometimes you find yourself, including equipment, etc., everything else, but you even forget to pay yourself because you're so focused. Oh, it's a passion project. I'm doing a passion project, but we forget to think about. We also need to eat. Even if you are taking your time out to do a passion project, you must still be able to make some sort of.
You have to strike a balance somewhere. But again, you can find ways to make this passion project go faster by having a shared community that might share that passion with you. That's something I'm really trying to do at the moment. Is I've started a Discord server to try and actually grow the community, to have access to each other, to ask the questions that they're burning to ask, to get feedback from each other, and just get to know who's who around them. That doesn't have to be big names. It's good to know who the artist down the street is, because maybe the artist down the street shares a good interest with you, and that can move your stuff along faster. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. And it is about striking the balance and also accepting that things are going to take time. I'm also working on a passion project now, which is now, I'm on my 3rd year and I've got the flippin' script and a rough storyboard. And like, that doesn't feel like a lot, but it will get there eventually, and that's fine. I'm going to cook, I'm going to clean, I'm going to earn my money for now. But I have a mission to eventually get that out there and seen. So really, I think we need to find this urge from within to make.
And what drives you? Because I can feel a lot of passion and drive. And I guess maybe it's a question for everyone. What drives you to tell the stories, the passion that you have to tell the stories that you tell? Because I think that does matter, Otherwise, if we didn't have the drive and the passion for it, then we can just drop it and just say, nah, it's fine, I can just do something. Even though, it's hurting us sometimes, like, oh my gosh, I don't have much money. You still come back to it, why?
I don't know if it's stupidity or what.
It's that thing of you do the work for, right? And you also very aware of, for me, I'm very aware of what I represent. So that's the drive. That's what
do you represent?
Going. My people. Represent my people.
Who do you represent? Why? Because I think
I represent anyone who feels they identify with me, And when I did the school screenings with the Ashley Krill film, I just felt like, apart from that content, it was equally as important for them to see me and that I did it and that a woman did it and that someone that looks and speaks like them did it, So that's what keeps the drive going, Also, you think of like Charlene Surti Richards, who passed away recently, and just what she represented. And so you know that there's this kind of torch that you must carry because there's just not enough of us out there, man. And this is, I'm particularly talking about Black women here, Tabeling, as I said, and how we understand Blackness. And just like, that's what keeps me going, because I feel like if I could, then how many Black women in Cape Town are making films? There's one less. And what does one less person, what does that mean? You know what I mean? So it's like,
do you not think that sometimes, sorry to cut you there, do you not think sometimes when we stand for a particular thing, or people can can shy away or run away from you. As a black man, if I say, look, my intention is to support black businesses, I run a business which is for black owned, etc. And then you find that sometimes people can look at you and think, no, this person is being.
I get you, but it's up to our own people to support us. It's who are we doing this for? I mean, if in America, Issa Rae can say, yeah, I'm here, I'm rooting for black people only. Remember, she did that at some awards. She said, I'm here, I'm rooting for you know what I mean? And so if she can do it, why can't we? And you mustn't be shy to say, this is my audience, and I'm very clear about who my audience for my work is.
Yeah.
And then we should be supporting one another, really.
I feel like I would be happy if my mission to support people that have not had the opportunities that others have had drives away people that are offended by that. I think it's good that it's pushing away a certain mentality. I don't think it's good energy to have around. I would be very disturbed if someone is upset by the fact you're trying to, address a gap in the markets instead of support that. But yeah, no, in terms of where the passion comes from, my view is, we've got a very limited time on Earth with a lot of chaos going around. And for me, doing this is a source of fun and enjoyment and community that I don't find in any other way. This is my outlet. So to have many people involved and to jump from one project to the next is sort of what gives me my zest for life.
And and I think that's so important because, especially in the creative sector, you must always kind of remember your why. A lot of the time, you find people, they're going to something and they're going there for, particularly now with your Instagrams and numbers and followers. Oh, I'm an influencer. Everyone wants to be an influencer. I'm like, why is that? What's an influencer? Why are you influencing? And we've got to remember that, because even that why will always kind of wake you up, even when it's difficult. And I mean, I know there's probably a lot of young people who are watching right now, and they probably, they have that why inside of them, and they should never forget that why, because that would drive them. Even if you say, hey, there's no funding, you still wake up and say, you know what, it's possible for my dreams to come through.
And that why has to come from such a deep place, like to chase fame. It's an empty existence.
I would like to see, sorry to cut you, I would like to see the industry being so independent that it actually begins, the wheels should turn. So the industry should then begin to influence change into government industries, so that we can then bring in more people, instead of the industry being the one that the government is giving to the industry for it to grow. And remember, growth from government is also not sustainable, because should we get to a point where government cannot provide, it means now that will be the death of the industry. When it should be the other way around, because of then the industry must be boosting the GDP so much that it uses government as part of the CSI programs, where we are then reinvesting into new entrance development of the industry. Because as things stands in South Africa, the rotation of how the cycle is going, it's the most boost is from government. And the profits are still not there. We are still not talking about business or film. We are not seeing good profits. We are not seeing a lot of sustainability where people can then, from the profits that they're making from their previous projects, they're able to then start their new projects without asking for more funding, but rather saying, let's rather, instead of getting money from government, which other doors can government then open for us, even if it's internationally, or doing more co-productions? That's really where I would like to see the energy. But I think from my side, what drives me to continue to doing the work is really to always be the mediator between politics, or rather government, and the industry. Because unfortunately, the industry is not patient about government. And government is not understanding the industry, because they're just feeling that you are investing today, but you're only seeing returns 5 years later. So there's always that confusion between the two parties which need each other. And I think I'm always happy to be that mediator, that I'm patient with Luntu, and I'm also patient with Mr. Money Koffer, and I'm just in the middle, and I'm smiling at both of you to say, give me the money, take Luntu, do it, give me. So I'm happy to do that, because there must be someone that is listening to both these parties complain about each other and saying, but these people are doing this thing and they're not finishing. And there's no money because we are not seeing what filmmakers are doing, and we've given them money, but we are not seeing the work. And I always say, unfortunately, making a film is not like producing a bottle of water where you actually see the returns instantly and somebody must buy this product. But there must always be that constant education and that constant patience to teach people about the audiovisual industries. But I think the only time also government could understand the audiovisual industries is if we are beginning to make profits, because once we are beginning to make profits, we are able to then have a deeper conversation around the table because we are bringing in something. And I think that for me should be what changes. That's the change that I would like to see happen as we're talking about change. To see that then we'll have a different conversation because we are bringing more money on the table, because now we are not asking for money, we are bringing the money and we are saying this is the change we'd like to see happen in order for it to grow our industry, to make sure that South Africa is the film choice or the hub of destination for filmmaking. Because the nice thing about South Africa is that we've got so many choices in locations. We've got forest in Eastern Cape, we've got the sea, we've got Gauteng, we've got so many locations which you can convert into anything. So how do we then begin to use the advantage of our landscape, of our talent, of our infrastructure, when we can then have a bigger chunk on the seat of the table and we start having deeper conversations instead of the conversations from our side being filmmakers, always being the side of we are just asking, because we are always requesting for more money. We are always saying there's not enough money. We are always saying government is not giving us enough. But if we are already saying we do have the little that we have, how do you help us change this movement? How do you help us change policies? Because you can't effect policy if you've got nothing to offer. Yeah. And that's the fact, right? Yeah. So that's why it's easy for businesses to always change policy because they always have something that they're putting on the table. But in our end, we are unable to do that because we are not putting anything. In actual fact, we are asking. So conversations can never be the same. And I think that's the change I would like to see happen in the industry.
How did Nollywood do it? That's a good question. In Nigeria, look at Nollywood, how they've developed a structure, in creating their own films. I don't know if government is involved, but I think I've always looked at it as a good platform to look at and say, that these guys are just creating their own work and how,
But the thing is that we also always have to remember that, in as much Nollywood was created from low budget films, which were not intended to grow, but eventually it grew, but they kept on producing the work that they are producing. They're only beginning, particularly where quality is concerned, they're beginning to improve on quality now. But their idea was more like one of the stations that we have, which I can't say the name, where it was just people talking about themselves and understanding that people generally would like to be on TV and people want to engage on things that they can relate to, particularly after everything that Nigeria has been through the wars. They felt that they wanted something that is going to be light, but people generally wanted to see themselves on TV and wanted to relate to what they understood better. And I think that's what made it to grow, because once people had appreciation, then that's that conversation Luntu of audience development. People started appreciating the content that was created because of it was talking about them, for them, to them, right? Yeah. So it was easy for people to protect that work because they saw themselves in the work.
Maybe
right?
that's our
so,
gap.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe that's part of the gap with us as South Africans, right?
Yes.
Like you say, you can make a film that's gonna go play at your family gathering once a year, whatever. But really, are you catering for a mass audience? That's the question. And I think that's also how, how you really have to, yes, we are creating art here, but at the end of it, can you survive of what you're doing? What you're doing is a job. I know that sometimes even my own family members struggle to understand that, but as a creator, this is your job, you must get paid, right? I think for your first few projects, it's fine if you're operating at a loss, you're finding your feet. But like eventually your end goal must be like, I'm gonna get paid, I'm gonna make a profit. And it's difficult, it's challenging. There are still some projects that I've done where I operated on a loss, but my end goal is to, survive of my talent. And I think that's where we
And
need to go.
whilst we're talking on the issue of money, Nadine, that's a good conversation because I love money. So I love that.
Oh Lord.
It's really, yeah.
Are we making money in this? Are we making, I'm not about millions, don't declare. We can continue to work in the industry. Are we seeing the returns of the work that we are investing in?
It's a very good question, eh? It's a very good question. I'm going to say not always. I think with my independent work, I'm able to charge a fee whenever I do screenings. When we're doing the school screenings, I had to charge a fee. People don't understand that sometimes. They think, oh, because of the content of your work, you're not being a comrade if you're charging. But how must I eat? This is also my work. You're a doctor. I don't come to your office and say, you're a comrade, you must fix me for free. You know what I mean? So, like, it's the same thing. It's like, I think people have to learn a respect for the arts. And for a long time, I was able to, I won't say I wasn't wealthy, but it was going well. I was charging for screenings and it was being okay. And then it's licensing your work and understanding what all of that means. But it's tough because licensing it's not an automatic thing. I mean, the broadcaster, whoever, needs to watch the work and then decide whether it suits their channel or what they want to do. So you really have to work hard. Someone told me from the beginning of your film, in development, you must already start marketing. And I was like, really? Sometimes it can take years to get a film off the ground. But what you are doing is building your audience, and your audience grows with you. So by the time you do release your work, those people are there to support you. So yeah, it's all about knowing what your end goal is, financially as well. Sorry, I didn't cough.
I agree. I think we also need to get out of this mentality that we need to have blinders on, that only this person in front of us has the money we want, and figure out that there are other ways. It involves a little more work, but there are more than a million ways to make money.
Show us. Tell us.
So one of the things that I don't know if any of you know, there's a creator on YouTube called Vivzy Pop. She's an independent animator who's like on Nickelodeon, Disney kind of levels, and she has refused all industry opportunities in terms of getting under a big studio. And what she's done instead is her and her team have created content for YouTube, and they've actually created like a cult following. People are absolutely mad for her work, and they, from the get-go, they've created really intensive merchandising. There's ways that they fund their films. For example, you can have a cameo in an episode. This comes back to loving seeing ourselves on screen. Even if you don't know how to do animation, you might want to pay a few rands in to see yourself as a background character animated in a series. So there's a number of ways that one can wangle getting money. And I think a big thing of it is stop with the blinders, but at the same time restrict your expectations so that you're forced under more pressure to look for more opportunities. A thing that I think would really, I so wish that we could do it in South Africa. Our industry, I think, is still too young for it. But there was a drive in France, for example, that they had the same issue where their culture was being oversaturated with film from outside of their country, and they were actually having this thing where they're losing culture, where everyone's now can speak Japanese, but they can't speak basic French. So what they did is they sort of put a restriction on what is allowed screened on TV, and only French film and French animation and French work was allowed on certain stations. So by not allowing the other markets to sort of overtake, they were forced to start creating content that eventually drove up people engaging and investing into the industry.
Yeah.
So I think
So it becomes being selfish.
Yeah, be selfish and realize that South Africa has a lot of excellence, a lot more excellence than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, I agree. No.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. No.
Luntu, the ching ching, is it there?
Oh no. I mean, bear in mind that I work mostly as an actor. You know, so.
But is the ching ching in acting? Are you getting the ching ching?
Not in acting. So what I've had to do actually is that, so years ago, I started my own company, and I do customer service training, and I use acting in corporate spaces and work environment to develop soft skills. How do you understand body language? Why is it important to articulate? How do you articulate yourself effectively? So that's how I use my art or acting in terms of creating an income for myself. And you know, that's pretty, you know, because of COVID now, it's kind of been more challenging. But before COVID, I mean, I've done some big brands. I don't want to name them now. And it really worked out well for me. And I guess now it's just thinking about, okay, what now? What next? And then going into producing. But I've realized as well, after producing Some Other Sons, I realized that, you know what, there's a lot of money you also have to take out from your own pocket before you can even start making money back, you know, and I'm even asking myself, so Nadine, I'm actually going to call you after this. Hey, how do I make this money? You know, because we've got a product, we've got a film, you know, and I can see now a lot of the money that we do have is going towards festivals, and you're submitting to festivals where you have to pay. At what point you're gonna start making, you know, money back? Yes, some of the festivals, if you win an award, a prize, it comes with money. But what now? Which other ways can you make money? And I'm questioning myself, and I'm asking myself, you know. But is there ching ching? I think there's ching ching out there somewhere, but I'll find it. I will find it.
I wish you do, so that you can share. So just a quick one. For now, where do we see Address Unknown? Where do we find some Mother's Sons? Where do we find Mothers in the Caves? Where do we see this content? Because I think that's the biggest thing that usually people will always say, but where do we find these films? Because we never see them in our broadcasts. What are we doing alternatively to still be able to show our work? Where are we finding your films? Where are we finding Action Commandant? Where are we finding your films?
Now, both Action Commandant and Address Unknown are on Showmax. So people who have access to Showmax, it is online there. And with Action Commandant, as soon as, and with Address Unknown, as soon as conditions are better, we will be having public screenings. We still want to have a public screening of Address Unknown at the District 6 Museum. So as soon as conditions are better, that is definitely one that we are looking forward to.
Okay. Luntu?
With Some Other Sons, we've been very intentional about sending it out to festivals first. Let it do the festival runs before we can even approach Showmax. But I was actually even talking with the team saying, look, instead of going to Showmax, why don't we do this into a feature? So I think our next phase with that, after it's done the festival runs, is to do an actual feature film of Some Other Sons. And then, you know, but it's about finding the money, you know, and approaching government once again. And you are right, you know, doubling about, you know, people relying on government for their films. And I've never been a fan of that. Honestly, never been a fan of relying on government. It's how do we approach private sponsors and who can actually fund us, you know, to actually do the film as a feature. So that's where the next step is. And then it's going to be screening on Monday, but that's private because of, is it because of COVID? I guess because of COVID, it's private and it's limited numbers at the Bioscope, and that's commissioned by Gauteng Film Commission. Thank you. And we'll see. I'll think of other platforms. Another thing what we want to do, because of the film and the topic of it, I actually want to approach venues and other cinemas and even have conversation where we can actually screen it, and then after have a panelist, and then we actually engage with people, and perhaps people will pay to actually come to that. So those are things I'm kind of looking at and thinking about and brainstorming with the team as well.
From the cave's mouth?
I'm just going to be that person, and I've shared the link in the Zoom folder, in the Zoom chat. It's free for anyone to go and watch and enjoy. But we actually were lucky enough to have our, through NAVF and GFC support and IFAS and everyone who's involved, we actually had our film screened over 3 slots over the course of a week on OpenView TV. I think it was channel 120 or 121. So we've gotten it out there on that, but other than that, it's available to anyone who would like to view it on YouTube. I would love it if there was a more, it would be great if South Africa had its own like YouTube platform, but specifically for South African film only, like our own Netflix, our own, something like that. That would be so great, because then there would be no confusion. We wouldn't have to send 1,000,001 links, but there's the link. Enjoy.
Thank you so
Maybe
much.
You can start that.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? Yes. And now, what work are you currently working on currently? Something that we're done with the ones that we've spoken about. Is there any new work you venturing into, Gianni? Do you want to start there?
Yes, we're actually going to be, okay, I can't say too much because of NDAs, but we're actually starting on production for a pilot for a children's series. And it is dealing with a little girl who has identity issues with her natural Afro hair. And it's going to be exploring, this culture of hair in South Africa and how different people perceive it, and how we can sort of address the misconceptions we have about our own, body image issues, and what other cultures might have about how hair works. Obviously, it's not me writing it. It's written by a very talented writer named Salilo. And as I say, I'm not going to say too much because I'm giving it away then. But that is in the works. We're going to be starting production. Well, production's technically already underway, but I will be directing that. So keep your eyes peeled for that soon. And then on a personal level, I'm still in the writing phase of another short film, which deals with toxic relationships.
Oh, yes.
It's not a fun one, but I'll find a way to make it fun.
we know those.
Unfortunately. But do you see them coming?
Nice.
That's the issue.
Thank you. Nadine?
So in terms of my independent work, I went into production with something earlier this year, and it will come out next year. I'm quite excited about the project because it's dealing with the fantastical, which is something quite new for me. So yeah, I can't say too much, but yeah, I think it's time that people also play around with genres.
Nice.
So Nuntu?
We are busy in the writing process for another film, a short film, which we want to shoot in the Eastern Cape, and want to shoot that around October. But we actually at that point now where we're actually just looking for funding. We've got a strong team actually, which is, it's also in a story which is very exciting and very close to my heart. It's a young man coming back from the UK and, goes back home, the Eastern Cape. And of course, there's culture clashes with him having grown overseas, and what defines him, one is as a man, but also not just looking at the man, but how does he navigate this space, this world, after he's been away from home for so many years. So that's something that we're busy working on at the moment.
Cheese Boy vibes.
No Cheese Boy. No,
Okay.
and it's not a Cheese Boy because he's also had to work his own way to define himself to be a man. And what is a Cheese Boy? How do we define one?
We will see. We will see from the feedback from the audience that the Cheese Boy worked or not. We will tell you. We'll be here. So just a quick one from our audiences. Maya Fanzel is saying very insightful points on the business of film and also tips on practical learning journeys getting into the film industry, but making it happen. But a good point there, Gianni, on each one teach one, to assist each other to collaborate and to grow the industry, and also how we teach each other to be part of it. Another comment is saying, I have a movie script written, but no sponsors. Can you help? I think this one is for the Gauteng Film Commission. Yes, we can help. You can go to the GFC's website. Unfortunately, application processes have been closed, but we are going to reopen for applications in the second quarter, I think around end of September. This is where for script development, you can then look into the GFCs or also follow the NFVF website. As and when there are calls for applications, then you are able to then apply so that you can get assistance for your script development. As well as somebody saying, I need help, and they left their phone numbers. I suppose this is for me calling them after this show. And and yeah, let's just give in our last words or closing remarks. We are chasing time. And let's start with you, Luntu.
Well, I think for me, what I'm going to go back into is that what's your passion? What's your why? What drives you? And I think we've always got to remember that. And that's at the center of what we kind of go for. Because once you understand your why and why you're doing the things that you want to do, why you want to come into the industry, why you want to tell the stories that you want to tell, why you're writing the script that you're writing, and nothing can move you, nothing can shape it. No matter when you say there's no funding here, there's no funding here, you'll find a way to make that happen. And just remember and hold on to that. Your dreams are possible.
Thank you. Gianni?
So it's twofold for me. The first is grow the team you want to work with. So don't be selfish and focus on just what you want to accomplish. But if you see someone struggling along the way and you know you have the capacity to at least point them in the right direction, do that, because those connections are really, really important. Invest in your community and they will invest in you. And then my second thing is know your why. I'm going off what Lunta says, but also don't get bogged down in a singular vision, because you're going to miss out on all the cool stuff that's happening around you as well. So don't get stuck on a dream. Know why you want to do something and enjoy the journey there.
Last but not least, Nadine.
Thank you so much. I would say, remember your bigger picture. So just practically, when you're starting for the project, have your marketing plan, have your distribution plan in place already. Be constantly working on that.
Well, thank you so much. I think from my side, I firstly want to thank you for making the time to spend with us in this Youth Month program and activities. This is the first day of the, so we're going to have this every Friday until the end of, which is the end of June. And thank you again to myself. You know, the host is never thanked, so I have to do this one right.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was hijacked, but thank you. This was a lovely conversation. And thank you to our viewers that watched and shared their comments and their questions. Thank you so much. We thank you for your feedback, but I think also more than anything, from the side of government and the Gauteng Film Commission, our interest is to see the industry grow, to see authentic stories being told, is to see the preservation of our heritage as well as languages and most forms, and also to just see each other celebrate each other's work locally before we can then be celebrated internationally. And I would like to wish you all the best in all your future endeavors, all your projects. I want to see them success And I will see everybody at the Bioscope because of them. That's where we'll be screening next week. Due to COVID, we're having them limited, but we are hoping as soon as the restrictions are eased, we're going to have wider screenings and we can then have them in various corridors within Gauteng. Thank you so much. Enjoy your afternoon and happy Friday and happy Youth Month. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Makakaisen ingap ka, ngibaha. Saub kemits ke kaisa sa wanga. Nesini watri. Adami batsi ahab. Itweanga. Oire bake wai. Ngausikwa. Wastiba.
In the 80s, Bonteheuwel responded to ever-increasing police action against them by forming the Bonteheuwel Military Wing, a self-defense unit drawn mainly from school children, many of whom were on the run from police.
That time we used to call it, we're going to have a day of action. Now a day of action is violence.
We were told that there's a youngster at a primary school that is starting to organize.
Ashley was the head figure at our school, Bonteheuwel High, and he was at all times busy, ready to recruit and develop students.
I could literally see him soaking it up.
We were youth who had no experience about freedom, he came to us and told us how to do things. Ashley was one of the guys who came to us and gave us pamphlets on how to make Molotovs.
Many people criticized Ashley and them. They are mad, they are playing with their own lives. But Ashley was informed by thorough political discussion.
Now we were targeted. We had to be a step ahead of the police continuously.
There was always special branch police watching, and it was horrible living like that.
I don't think Ashley wanted to be a hero. What you see in front of me is what I am, a servant of my people.
Long, tapered face with a mop of curly black hair. A lean, slender body dressed in khaki shirt and black beret. He was the Che Guevara of the Cape Flats.
Kom tot Bonteheuwel te gaan. Maar die is dan ons plek. Ons hart en ons ziel lewe in die plek. Die is waar ons hoort.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ibi, waar is jy, Ibi?
Ibi! Eendag gaan ek nog uitvind waar hy woon.
Joey, moet nie dom wees nie, man.
Is nog nie my tyd nie, Nancy.
Ayazibona imini yami yokupheka ke lamhlanje. Kodwa ndizabuya ngexesha eva. I'll cook us something nice. See you soon. Ndakuthanda. Hi mama. Ayazibona imini yami yokupheka ke lamhlanje. Kodwa ndizabuya ngexesha eva.
Mama. Awuthangela yaphi itafuleni yimi? Inyawo ngemntakababa. Usithi uyaphi namhlanje?
Ndiya kwi-boyfriend. Nawe ndizakufunela ke tana. Hayi bo mama. Oh, phofu njengotata.
Uyabuya phofu?
Yeah. No, ndiyabuya.
Uthena waqiniseka?
Ndiyabuya mama. Ndiyabuya.
so free.
No,